with our usual suspects, Mr. Howie Darkstar.
Dude.
The boy who cried, to be blunt, I'll be honest, Jay from Swingin' Temecula, and he's standing in tonight for Boston John in the record roundup. Boston John couldn't be with us. He has Boston John things going on.
Yep.
But Jay has Boston John's submission for the record roundup this week, where we all present one album that we're just turning you on to as an audience, thinking maybe you'll dig it.
Yep.
And what's John's pick this week? John Denver's greatest hits.
Yep. RCA 1973. Leaving on a Jet Plane. Take Me Home, Country Roads, Poems, Prayers, and Promises. A lot going on in this album. Rocky Mountain High.
Oh, it's chock full.
Yeah.
I'm Sorry's on there.
Yep. I'm Sorry's on there.
Good album.
Rhymes and Reasons, Follow Me, Sunshine on My Shoulder. I mean, a classic.
That song. Oh my God. Yeah. I love that song.
That's such a beautiful track. Yeah, so did I. I mean, it really was very generational, but I think it surpassed that.
Well, it's the kind of thing, you know, a 3-4-year-old can relate to. Okay, Sunshine on My Shoulders. When I don't know, yeah. You get
it wasn't tough to figure out what the message
was. You know what he was talking about. It was kind of neat.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Say what you,
great writer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of the best.
You might be young on this one. I know you're an old soul, but you know, the mid 70s, he went from, hey, that's the guy that you see on TV once in a while singing, to, hey, that's the guy in every TV show, had a TV show.
Well, yeah, he was in movies. Did Oh God.
Movies,
he was really good in
Oh
that.
God.
Yeah.
With George Burns.
A lot of Love Boat.
He really just went on fire.
Well, the interesting thing about John Denver, in my humble opinion, is the only other artist I can think of that's kind of in the same category almost, but not quite, would be Jim Croce.
Yeah.
Because they didn't really define a genre. They didn't fit into any particular genre. Jim doesn't.
Right.
They and John doesn't.
Songwriters.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can write John off as a country artist, but it's too good to be country. We've talked about this. It's all pop all day, but it's folksy.
Right.
Definitely.
It could be country, but it's better than that.
Jim Croce was super folky, I think, in the beginning, and it really quickly became pop.
Mm-hmm.
We did both.
But it was that genre. It was that generation. James Taylor, Ham, Arlo Guthrie. Carole King, Joan Baez.
Joni Mitchell.
And I don't know if you know this. How old do you think Jim Croce was when he died?
Like 28 or 29 or something stupid like that.
Very close. 30.
Very young.
Was he 30?
Yeah, 30. Because I played him on Twitch the other night, and Jim, who you know, police officer Jim, made a mention of he thinks he died leaving his old college is the night he had the plane crash. And I was like, gosh, how old was he? And he's 30. And I'm like, he got a lot squeezed in there. And then I played a Harry Chapin track, and he died at 39.
Well, I remember when Jim Croce died. It was the first time I remember like kind of that uncomfortable feeling, because on the radio they were talking about he had just died and they played Time in a Bottle, which was a relatively new song at the time. Those two things together were just haunting. And the only other thing I can remember as a child of someone's dying, and that was a couple of years later, was Elvis. But yeah, I remember that. And that was that's like his biggest song and his last song. It's kind of like the Buddy Holly thing. What would have happened if Buddy Holly would have stuck around? How crazy would it have gotten? Because his best work was his latest work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
where was this going to go?
Too. I mean, he was really hot.
Oh, yeah.
I can think of 2 Richie Valens songs. O'Donna and Obama.
Young. What could he have done had he not?
He was very young, though. He was a teenager, wasn't he?
Right.
Was he really?
18, 19? Oh,
yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, was that. I guess he had to, but he would have to have been.
Yeah, he was very, very young.
But he was new.
Moving. Oh, yeah.
As in my understanding is he had just hit. And this was his first thing he did.
But it's so funny and I don't know the genre so well to be an expert. I mean, we've got JC watching, so he's much more of an expert. You're probably more of an expert. I'm not the big Latin guy in the room, but you look at the first sign of Latin music becoming pop was really, let's say, Richie Valens. I can't think of much past him, like Jose Feliciano.
I give it to Ricky Ricardo.
Well, I'm not saying
Desi Arnaz.
Right. I'm not saying started it. I'm saying if you look at the trail.
No, for it entering into pop culture, I think I would give it to Desi Arnaz.
Oh, no. And that's very true. Really? I'm saying from Richie Valens forward, look at the span of time it took. Because let's face it, in the last 20, 25 years, Latin music has become
huge,
massive, like hugely massive.
It's really interesting when you.
I'm just out.
I won't give it away for you.
What would have happened?
Do your own homework on this, but there are videos on this and there are essays on this about Latin artists that you didn't know were Latin artists.
Like, I'm sure
you didn't know that this band was a Latin band, but they were a Latin band all day. There are so many like that are so cool. Well, when you're looking at this, songs you've known your whole life, like I had no idea his real name was, Alejandro Rivera or whatever,
Right.
Well, that was the time in America where everybody wanted to assimilate and they changed to American sounding names to fit in and be successful.
Right. But look at someone like Richie Valens, who his first big hit was really La Bamba.
Right.
I think, even before O'Donnell.
And that was a remake.
But it was done at a time
not
when
a remake, but
it wouldn't have made it just.
It was a rendition of a popular song
in Mexico.
Yeah.
And it made it to the charts and it made it to bandstand, level prestige.
Sure.
It's so interesting had he stayed. And I don't spend days on days thinking about, but there are times I wonder, what would Hendrix be doing? He just turned 80,
of course.
I think.
Yeah.
His 80th birthday was recently. He would have been in that age group of the Stones had he survived it. What would he have morphed into?
Everything worked out in interesting ways. I think he would have stayed
Jimi Hendrix. I think he would have then gone on to go either down a jazz route or a blues route or something.
Who knows?
But I think he would still be influential as an elder statesman of music and guitar. So what would Richie Valens have inspired in the 60s with Beatles? Would there have been a Latin Beatle group that would have gotten the same kind of notoriety because of a Richie Valens starting? That's all I'm saying.
Could be.
The thought.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda. So what's your pick for this week, Jay? Since we're on you.
I don't think I've done this one, and I'll be honest, I didn't give it a
want the intro music?
Yeah, play the intro music, Howie.
Play the intro music. Forgot we have that.
Or The Boy Who Cried stuff. You'll get it worked out in a minute. I heard his Bluetooth kick in when you started talking.
Yeah, it did. I don't know.
Oh, he missed his cue.
Missed my cue.
It wasn't subtle this week.
Oh, I think I know what may have happened.
Well, while Howie's figuring that out, what's your pick for this week, Jay?
Here we go.
Oh, wait. Sorry. Here we go.
We got it.
Maybe.
Aren't you glad you waited for that?
I really am.
Okay, go ahead, Jay. What's your pick for this week?
Jay. That's
I don't think I've given this one yet, so I'm going to use this one because I was a little caught off guard.
Okay.
But I'm going to go to the 1980. 1980 was a big year in music, and if you go back and look at the releases of 1980, I'll give you two. It's not my album, but just two examples: Blizzard of Oz.
Yeah.
Back in Black.
Mm-hmm.
And then this little number called Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath, where they had moved forward. Ozzy had left the band, been kicked out by Don Arden, their manager.
Mm-hmm.
Don Arden's daughter, Sharon Arden, decided she would manage Ozzy and thought there was still something in the bucket. And Sharon Arden better as Sharon Osbourne, his wife of... Yeah, it's got to be going. They got to be married 40 years.
It's fun when Jay can speak on a subject that he is fluent in. He will embellish the crap out of it. Go ahead, keep going, Jay.
Just saying. So Ronnie James Dio, formerly of Elf, and most famously formerly of Rainbow, Richie Blackmore, formerly of
I was going to just say that.
See, he just keeps going.
Yep.
He then was tasked to take the vocals, and I mean, I don't care what day of the week it is, calling Ozzy Osbourne a good singer, no.
I think he has an interesting voice.
He has an interesting voice.
I honestly do.
The way Tom Waite has an interesting voice to me. Tom Waite has an interesting voice and it serves the song. Ozzy's voice isn't very good, but it serves the song. Ozzy can't write.
I don't know. I like his
tone. But, I think the best he ever sounded was probably Never Say Die.
Okay, hater. Keep going.
I'm not a hater. I've seen Ozzy like 6 times. I'm not a hater. But I'm making a comparison between him and his predecessor.
Right.
Mr. Ronnie James Dio, who has
an amazing voice.
Top 3 best singers, probably in the world of hard rock.
Ever.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Him, the cat from Scorpions is good.
Klaus Meine, very good voice.
Good. Yeah.
Rob Halford probably holds the title as Metal God from Judas Priest of having the best voice.
And Delp, which is not really heavy metal stuff, but it's a good
voice. But for range, Brad Delp from Boston. Amazing. But it's a really good, heavy album. And I think if you were a fan of Sabbath from before, and a lot of people didn't jump on Heaven and Hell right away because they were like, no, Ozzy's not there. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. The anthem, Heaven and Hell, which is about 7 or 8 minutes long, is an incredible song that really ramps up. And Ronnie James Dio has a writing style where he's insanely good about using lines that stick out. Line, in Heaven and Hell, you got to bleed for the dancer. We're not sure who the dancer is, but if you're a high schooler, that's so profound to hear. Children of the Grave, Wishing Well. It's chock full of really, really good, hard music. And it's not over anybody's head. You don't have to be a huge fanatic metalhead to really appreciate the virtuosity of the band, but also the stylings of Ronnie and his writing. Just, incredible writer. You could read his writing of a song and enjoy it without the music. And there aren't many writers that can do that, in my thought process.
Well, thank you for that, Jay. So that's Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell from 1980. Yes. Howie, what do you have?
I went with something brand new. 2022.
Wow.
And I hope this isn't not too shiny, is it?
Well, I can't see what it is.
It's
new stuff from Journey.
The new
Journey is a new release.
Wow.
Yes.
What about the Filipino kid?
And it's called Freedom. And they wrote this during COVID from 2020 to 2022. And of course, 13 out of the 15 songs are written by Jonathan Cain, which he goes way back with them. And I previewed this online, and I was like, there's like 6 good songs that I really, really like, and it was cheaper to buy the CD or the album than it was to buy each individual track. Then I found, wow, there's a song on here that could possibly be like a first dance song, and there's some rockin' songs on here that could actually, be dance songs. And then there's a song, the first dance song I would think would be like Come Away With Me. I mean, they're going on their honeymoon, so it would make sense. I mean, if these hit the charts, I would hope that they would. But I mean, that was my pick. And nice. I thought of Jay when I picked this. When you mentioned about, hey, you want to go see AC/DC, you're going to get AC/DC.
Right.
And this particular album, it's Journey. Yeah. It's exactly what you expect.
But don't you think that's the beauty of it?
It works two purposes for me,
Right.
It's like I could use it and I can use it for pleasure. So that's it.
I just think that shows so much more skill than people give those bands credit. I mean, I'm sorry, the new Stones tracks that they've put out in the last 10 years, they sound like they were made in the 70s, but that's what I want. When I order meatloaf with mashed potatoes and brown gravy, don't bring me something else. Like,
right.
when I get an AC/DC album or I go to an AC/DC show, I want to know that I'm getting AC/DC. I don't know. And everyone gets all upset with me about like, no, you should evolve and change. I'm like, do you know how hard it
not
is
always
to make a sound that goes back to the mid 70s and in 2022 be able to deliver that sound over and over? That's much harder than saying, hey guys, you want to Spinal Tap this and we'll do a jazz fusion number? No. If your fans want this, give them that. I hate hearing these interviews like, yeah, I'm going to the woods because, I got to grow, and you got a good thing making money, fame and fortune and everything else. Just do a side project. Have a band called XYZ or whatever name's not taken and deliver your stuff there. Neil Schon, I've got 4 albums by Neil Schon that aren't from Journey. That's why Journey sounds like Journey, because when Neil Schon wants to sound like somebody else, he goes and works with, I've got him on solo, I've got him with Hager, and I've got him with Jeff Beck, and I've got him with Jan Hammer. There you go. Well, by the way, what's the controversy?
Oh my God.
What's the controversy with them? Right?
You should hear the solos on this thing. Oh my God.
He's insane.
You know what? You're gonna get this, Jay.
Do you know who lead singer of another band whose favorite guitarist is Neil Schon? Is Phil Anselmo of Pantera. He thinks Neil Schon is the best guitar player out there. Pantera. So that's high praise.
That is high praise. Yeah.
So that's
Brian, what are you bringing us?
Journey Freedom, huh?
Yep.
Gonna have to sample that. Now I'm really curious.
Yeah, you'll find a couple tracks you really like.
I'll sample it. I'll check it out.
Downside is there's some controversy with the band right now, and apparently they're not going to tour because Jonathan Cain and Neil Schon have some legal thing going on, I guess. Something about split revenue and credit. And I haven't delved into it, but I saw a quick clip last week.
Is that a surprise? I mean, these days, like, especially because Jonathan Cain is the composer of 13 of the songs, he's going to want more money. So it happens with every band.
Right. Well, I think it's past revenue too. Like I said, I've got to do my research, but I heard last week Journey might end up in court over this, and this.
That's a shame because it's a nice album that they could do hits off of this or do that, and then, like Pink Floyd used to do, they would do new stuff and then they would do a whole album, like let's say Dark Side of the Moon or whatever, and make for a nice show.
But doesn't that bring you to a show? I've probably gone to 10 shows based solely on the fact that the band's promise was, we're going to play this album in its entirety.
Yes.
Track 1 to the last track. And I've been like, that I'd like to see. I'll go to that show. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, you can certainly further your career by delivering what got you the career in the first place.
Exactly.
Sorry to take your time, Brian.
No, it's okay. We're all friends. We're all here hanging out. This is
what is your thoughts this week?
My pick this week is something I've been thinking about for a couple of weeks, and when it comes down to it, I just brain fart and don't bring it up. I really like this album.
Prince.
Truth be told, there are 3 really solid songs in this album. The rest of it's just good. It's an incredibly tight band. This is music that if you're a cool mobile DJ, you have played in an event at one time or another. And I don't think it gets the credit it deserves. It's great writing. It's a fantastic, very, very incredibly tight band. And that would be Rick Springfield, Working Class Dog.
Great album.
Oh, this is a really cool album.
It is a cool album.
It is.
I have it. Yeah, it's a cool album.
So you all know Jesse's Girl, right? That's the song that you play at a gig sometimes, and it goes over really well. And I think even the kids know Jesse's Girl. There are 2 other really good songs in this album. One is I've Done Everything for You. That's a really good song.
It's a really good song.
And back in another life when I used to play in bands, we used to play this one all the time. And that is Love Is All Right Tonight, which is a really good song.
Yeah.
You know, when this came out, I think a lot of like music aficionados dismissed this as whatever. Like it was too simple, and it was just
because he was on General Hospital at the time.
Yes.
And that was the only press he was getting was, what's this actor doing putting out an album?
Well,
Right.
Jesse's Girl, I don't think anybody questioned that song, but some of his other tracks, it's like, okay, it's just kind of lip service to the teenage fans and stuff. But no, this is actually really good, and it's held up really well too.
Yeah.
You know who plays guitar on all of Jesse's Girl, right?
I don't know.
Beginning to end of Jesse's Girl is Neil Giraldo from Pat Benatar's band.
Pat Benatar's
Very good.
husband.
Well,
Yeah,
yes,
I was
now her
thinking-
husband. But
Well, I think
back
wasn't
then,
it then? I don't know, like 82.
more or less? Yeah, more or less. I think
They were together anyway.
Oh,
yeah.
they were together. But yeah,
I know
he
that was
played
Neil Giraldo. though.
all the guitar because there's a running controversy that Rick Springfield's guitarist on the next
Right.
album and on all of his tours for like 10 years was a guy named Tim Pierce, who's now catching a lot of YouTube fame because he's a session guitarist who's played on everything. And he's a super down-to-earth, nice guy I've met. But it's been one of those like real geeky music trivia things. Who played guitar on that song? And the answer is Neil Giraldo.
Now, I would tell you that, Rick Springfield's got a lot of music. I can't tell you that I'm a big fan of a lot of the other music. This is the album. Now, he did albums before this.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was doing albums when he still lived in Australia because he's
think
from
so.
Australia.
Yeah. He doesn't
And I
have
think,
much
like-
of an accent.
Like, neither does Mel Gibson, who's actually from New Jersey but grew up in Australia. But he had a very heavy Aussie accent and broke it, and now doesn't sound like he's from Australia or even lived there at all.
No,
But-
but even when he was on General Hospital, he didn't have an accent.
No, but he had been here for a
Right.
while. I think the early Rick Springfield stuff was from the early 70s.
Yeah, he was in
So
like
he
a
wasn't-
teeny bop. Actually, Scrappa talked about it. I think he was in like a teeny bop band over in Australia
Yeah.
because they had that period where they were doing what we were doing, but they didn't have the Osmonds. They had this, and they didn't
Right.
have this.
Right.
They had that.
Right.
And their
Right.
Partridge, they had answers to other
Sure.
bands because they're such a centralized unit as a country when it comes to music. They have their acts.
Mhm.
So I mean, here's a guy who was an actor and a musician, and America didn't really know him as a musician, but knew him as an actor. I
Right.
can't say that he's done a lot of stuff since General Hospital, though. I mean, I
Right.
can't think of a movie Rick Springfield was in. I'm sure he was, but I just can't think of it. It's
I
a
think
shame.
that was the one.
He probably should have done movies.
He's a good
But
looking
anyway.
guy.
It's a decent album. It really is. If you like rock and roll, it's in essence, it's simple stuff. It's not real complicated, but it's done so incredibly well. It's really
Yeah.
good.
Well,
You know where
he's
it was
fared a
recorded?
lot better than William Shatner covering David Bowie
Or Elton John, or the
or
Beatles,
Elton John
or
right?
whatever he did. Yeah,
I like Elton John's version of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds almost better
That-
than I like
Yeah,
the Beatles.
well, that's from the movie. Yeah, yeah.
I'm talking about
And-
William Shatner's version of that. Yeah.
No, but which do you like better? The Who?
Or wait a minute, was that William Shatner or was that Leonard Nimoy who did that? I'm getting them confused because they both did stuff like that.
They both
Yeah,
did
they
wacky
did.
stuff.
Yeah,
Well, look at, again, Elton doing The Who in Pinball Wizard.
right, and that was fun.
Right. Yeah.
That was really good.
Mhm.
By the way, because you weren't there, Brian, Sunday, I just learned something. I played Nicolette Larson.
A lot of love.
A lot of love. Great song,
Lot of
right?
love.
Weird Al Yankovic's ex-girlfriend.
Really?
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow.
Somebody, and well, if you don't know this, don't look it up yet. I was blown away to find this out. I found this out last week. That song was written by her then boyfriend, and he was going to record it. And she goes, "Oh my God, I love this song. Can I record it?" And he goes, "Yeah, go right ahead." Her
Okay.
boyfriend who wrote "Lot of Love,"
Uh-huh.
Neil Young.
No.
Yeah, you know what? I knew that she did it, but
100%.
I didn't know he wrote it.
Yeah.
He wrote "Lot of
Yeah.
Love," the whole thing.
I'm really glad that she gave it away because I can just hear Neil doing that
I
song.
can't imagine him doing it.
It's gonna take a lot of
It would have been like, but that's it. Like maybe he would
No.
have discoed it up a little. but probably not.
No, it would have sounded like
No.
old man. Everything Neil Young does sounds like old man and Sugar
That's
Mountain.
not a bad thing.
That's true.
It's not a bad thing.
I don't dislike Neil Young, but
Yeah.
he's consistent like AC/DC. I know what I'm going to get from Neil Young.
Right.
You know, he got sued by Geffen.
But he's written for a lot of famous, stars out there. I mean, he gave away. He's a prolific writer, but
Yeah.
I think he knew in his head that, like, yeah, this isn't my, somebody else should sing this.
No, Neil Young is with now. I didn't know this until recently.
Oh, he's been with her for a long time too.
Yeah,
I know. who
Daryl
he's with.
Hannah.
Daryl Hannah. Yeah, they've been together for like years.
No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
By the
Well,
way,
he
real quick-
recently lost a wife. like within the last decade.
Wow.
And that's the last I knew. And then I looked
maybe
at
that's
with Daryl Hannah. So
maybe
you must
they've
have
been together for 10 years or something. I thought
yeah,
been
maybe
quite
it's
a
been
while.
10 years. Yeah.
Real quick, one of the most embarrassing moments, that Rolling Stone article I mentioned a week or two ago, one of them was David Geffen sues Neil Young after Geffen Records signed him in like late 90s, probably, because that's Geffen's heyday, and sued him because the album he produced and put out didn't sound like Neil Young. That's the lawsuit. This doesn't sound enough like
gosh.
you. We're going to sue you. He's like, what do you mean? It's my writing. It's my voice. It's my album. Nope. This doesn't sound like, it's the exact polar opposite of Brian.
What was that? This note's
everything
for you
sounds like
like
old
that?
man.
Yeah.
I think it was. And it's like, wait, this isn't why we signed you. We wanted to get Old Man and Needle and Damage.
Right.
Sorry.
Heart of Gold. Come on, do Heart of Gold again.
Little Neil Young trivia. Neil Young bought Lionel trains when they were on the verge of bankruptcy and China was going to buy them. And Neil Young stepped in and bought Lionel trains and kept the manufacturing in the United States.
I knew he was a train guy. Him and Rod Stewart are both big train guys.
Yep.
Yeah,
Lionel, he owns Lionel trains.
The actual order is Neil Young, Rod Stewart,
Chris Bedke.
Bedke, yeah. I didn't know if you were aware. That's the actual.
He might be ahead of one of them. I don't know.
Actually, he's probably ahead of both of them, but
yeah.
And he's bigger than both of them.
He's bigger than both of them put together.
Yes. If you put them together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
No questions asked.
I recently heard, well, I knew this, I guess, that Neil Young did sell his catalog too. He just sold out.
Yes,
and then
he just sold it.
Was it Springsteen was saying that Neil Young was freaking out because he heard his song in one of his commercials? And it's like, wait, that's what happens when you sell your catalog. They can do stuff with them. Yeah.
Yeah. But he sold it to a friend. And he said there was some agreement. Because he would, again, if you have the app, go to the SiriusXM app. There's an incredibly good interview with Neil Young and Howard Stern. And he says, so you sold your catalog. He's like, I thought it was time, but I didn't sell it out to somebody I didn't know. I sold it to somebody that's sort of in the circle. So I still have some control over it. Well, you have control over everything until money gets thrown in your face, and then control goes right out the window.
I had another Neil Young question too, Jay. You seem to know an awful lot about this cat. You mentioned the Lionel thing. Didn't he have something to do with that Zune music player back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's big on high res music.
Like WAV files or something.
WAV file quality. He thinks all music should be that way. He was really heavily into the Zune thing because he's like, you need to hear my music the way I wrote it. And it was
he part owner of that? Or?
Yeah, no, I think he was part owner.
Okay.
Yeah, he was. He was part owner. Actually, he had the majority share. And they actually came out with a player that was like a Walkman.
Yeah, it was in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Yeah, they actually had a player that you had to buy and then buy the files.
Yeah,
and then buy the files. Yeah,
but his big thing is the quality. He thinks is just crap nowadays, and like the streaming MP3 thing, and he thinks it all should be high res. And he's like, you don't know what you're missing, and here's what it sounds like. And I got to give him props on that. He's
got a point.
Well, and he's a bit of a contradiction. He's playing an old 50s Gibson Les Paul that's at the beginning of technology in the way of the guitar, but it sounds so good to him he won't upgrade it. But yet his ear wants to hear high-res files that are digitally encoded. But yet he lives in both analog and digital quite well, it seems.
I tell you what, there's something to be said for high-res.
Absolutely.
It's easy to say it, but I'll give you an example that's like an analogy example. And I just discovered this with Andy last week. Andy is visiting right now. He's going home tomorrow.
Give him our best.
I will. We are flipping through YouTube videos and just looking for things. We'd watched some car crash stuff, whatever. And these videos popped up of these street scenes from the beginning of the 20th century, the 50s, the 60s, or whatever, remastered in 4K. And I'm like, well, what's that look like? So we put it on. We're going down like the Sunset Strip in 1952, and somehow they've remastered this in 4K. It looks real. The color's off, but the movement is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And you gain a whole new perspective. I mean, that was well before I was born. Yeah. But I think my whole life, I don't know why I'm thinking that when my mother was growing up, everything was in black and white. You know, I don't know why I think that, but I do. Because I have
you have that association.
I have no other association other than that. You know, every time you walked into the room, it was music like Ozzy and Harriet, and and it was just people walking up and down the stairs, watching the dresses flowing, the way people were dressed, the cars, people honking their horns.
Now, did you see Howie on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I was there. Actually, I was on that episode of Bonanza. That was the very first color television show ever.
Howie was
I was the boy in the background carrying water from the horse.
Bonanza.
Yeah, Howie played the old man on that one. Credited as Howie Darkstar, older gentleman in the back.
No, that's just screen res. I mean, that's like 4K. Yeah. They didn't have the color right. This guy's remastering stuff slowly. He does about one a month. It's very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, for music, it's kind of the same thing. You hear things through good speakers, through good files that you're not going to hear through just some crap YouTube video and maybe not great speakers. It's an audio chain thing. You got to have everything. You got to not only have good speakers or good monitors, but you also have to have good files and good processing. And one thing is off, there's a weak link in the chain and the chain breaks.
I have never liked Apple Music as much as I've gone there and bought thousands of dollars of songs and listened to things. And what I have never liked about them, and for those of you that don't know, I'll give you a quick MP3 lesson. There are two forms. There's CBR and VBR. And CBR is constant bit rate. VBR is variable.
Variable.
iTunes sells VBR tracks, meaning if there's a lull in the song, if they can drop the bit rate from high of 256, because they don't even do 320, from 256 down to 3, they will.
Yeah.
The problem is the recovery time will affect it. And you can listen to a CD and an iTunes store purchase song at the same volume. And I'm no audiophile, but you can hear the push down. It's called compression. It's where the file is being pushed down on itself. Well, if you squeeze something down, things come out of the sides, meaning you're losing highs and lows and mids and instruments and vocals and resonance. It's just, that's why you hear old people say, oh, I missed vinyl. I loved vinyl. Because you had an actual representation of what they did in the studio under the needle.
I will give you an argument on vinyl or records. I don't like to say vinyl. It just doesn't fall off the tongue very well for me. Records, they're records. And the records that I enjoy the most are records from probably, I would say, the 80s when it was an analog recording.
Right.
So if the recording was analog and the synthesizers they used were analog, you're getting almost like a perfect replica that if it's a good pressing and it's a good cut, a good cutting of the record, a good master of the record. There were some terrible ones. For instance, one of the worst records I've ever bought and been, so it was probably 1983. I bought a copy of Yes's 90125. Hideous.
Wow.
Really?
So the record itself, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. I think is that IRS who does that?
Well, they change the weight of the vinyl itself.
Yeah, there's 180 grams. That's the good stuff, and it gets thinner and thinner. This record is wafer thin, and the fidelity on it is garbage. It's unfortunate. It was great and so for me, it was a treat to get that on CD. Now, having said that, Yes 90125, most of it's digital. It's Fairlight Series 2 shit. Those are all out of like the standard Fairlight library. Even the guitar bit at the beginning is standard Fairlight. The horn stabs are absolutely, but the guitar is all except for that solo in the B section. All the other guitar is Fairlight. So it's a digital recording anyway, so it sounds great on CD. If something was recorded digitally, I prefer it in digital format.
Right.
But records does not do it justice. But if it was recorded analog and it's a good pressing and it's a good master, it's fantastic. And that's the argument you get from people who are into classical music, because the strings, it's the analog thing.
Right.
The digital is like zeros and ones, 0 1 0 1 0 1 0 1. It's all put together real tightly.
That's exactly what Dave Grohl was trying to do because he bought that studio with the 2-inch tape. And
he's got the Neve board from Sound City.
Yes. From Sound. Yes, it was Sound City.
Yeah, Sound City.
It was
where Rick Springfield's album was recorded.
Right, but he wants that studio for that sound, and there are certain artists that will want that. Exactly what Brian explained. They know their ears, and that's what they want. And they will sell the record.
Yeah.
And then it'll be obviously converted to digital, but they want that.
I know Brian's not a huge Foo Fighters fan, but the fact that he said early in their career, like mid-career, you know what? The next album, we're going to record it on tape.
Yeah.
At my house. And we're going to get Butch Vig, who was the producer, I think engineer as well, but I know producer at Sound City.
Yes.
Or Nirvana, Nevermind. And we're going to have them recorded at our house. So there's no digital. It's one take. You can't make mistakes. We can't just keep recording the same drum line or whatever. And he did it because he wanted that warmth. He wanted that throwback to the way music used to be done. When you think about Fleetwood Mac taking 1.5 years to make 8 songs on Rumors, you get a better sense of it, because if you mix drugs and bad relationships into it, and the fact that you had to be perfect on the take, so they could spend hours practicing the one line, and then when the red light goes on, you can't keep screwing up, or that's money out of your own pocket.
Yeah, but they did. 1.5 years, but there are 7 fantastic songs in there. One I don't like. One song off Rumors I don't like, but
no. I'm not.
There are 7 great songs.
No, there are,
and it's like what, the number 2 best-selling album of all time or something like that.
But something like that.
Take 1.5 years to make that album, please.
But think about it. I remember when Metallica and Def Leppard came out with cassettes that were 60 minutes long.
Yeah.
I think Def Leppard's was like 59 and Metallica was like exactly 60.
Hysteria
in the mid-80s.
And
I think it was Injustice.
Injustice, yeah.
Yeah. And they were like a full hour on a cassette. There was like 15 tracks, and this is insane. Go back 4 or 5 years. The Black Sabbath album I'm talking about tonight, that album is 38 minutes long. I had it on vinyl and CD. It's only 38 minutes to get through. The first Van Halen's like 35 minutes. You think back to these bands taking 1.5 years to make a 40-minute album. And then all of a sudden the 80s show up and bands are chunking out hour of material.
Oh, hold on a second.
Not all of them. But
Wait a minute.
It certainly was happening a lot faster.
I don't know, man. Look at Elton John's albums in the 70s. And even the Beatles albums in the 60s.
Really sure.
How many albums per year were they doing?
Well, Elton John did an album a year for 5 years. The only reason tour for 5 straight years.
The only reason I think that they limited it to 1 album a year is because it was a money saver thing where it's like, okay, look.
Well, they had to tour to make the sales.
But we have to have time to promote the album.
Exactly.
Right? And if you release an album every 3 months, like the Beatles did and Elton John did early on, and a lot of artists did, Willie Nelson did it, Lon did it, we don't have time to promote the album.
Right.
We'll lose what songs are on what albums.
Well, and the proof of that your comment is Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, double album.
Yeah.
That's the proof of your argument. This is the same concept that Stephen King as a writer ran into. He goes to his people and goes, "Hey, I got another book. Let's wait. We got to move more of The Shining first. We got to move more, The Stand. We got to, well, I just want to, I need to get more books out. I got more books.
I'm an artist. I have material. I want to get it out. Yeah.
And suddenly it came to him, well, what if I put books out under the name Richard Bachman?
Yes, Richard Bachman.
So I'm going to write books as Richard Bachman just to get them out there. And let's see if they don't know it's Stephen King, if the book could sell. And there was one guy that cracked the code and finally called him and said, "Hi, my name is John Smith. I'm a writer for this little newspaper in Washington. Are you Richard Bachman?" And he gave him an interview because he knew that his stupid book company next week was going to release Thinner, written by Richard Bachman, and under it put as Stephen King. So they were going to sell him out. So he asked how he figured it out. And the guy said, "I went through Thinner and I started highlighting examples that I was like, wow, this sounds like something Stephen King would write." So then I went back to your early books and I started highlighting and I started finding exact lines. And it took me a year, but I cracked it and figured this has got to be Stephen King's writing. There's nobody else that could write like this. And he was very, very impressed with the guy.
Well, I've read everything by Stephen King, even as Bachman, and there's a common thread where he interweaves different books together, where you'll be like, wait a minute, that's, like, wasn't that in a book I read by Stephen King? And then when they revealed that it was, it was Stephen King, I was like, that makes sense. It does make sense.
The Today Show, is there anything out there that you're afraid of? What really scares you? And he kind of paused.
He said,
in typical Stephen King fashion, he goes, "I have an easel in my attic that has the outline of a story that frightens me so much I can't write it." And the girl just sat there, no clue what to do or say, just stared at him like,
I thought he was going to say, "I'm afraid of vans on a lonely
vans on a lonely Bangor main road are not a good thing."
No, you know what he did? He bought that van.
Oh, I'm sure he did.
He bought the van so that no fans would use it as a tourist attraction and had it shredded.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely believe that. He's in a metal band with a bunch of other writers too.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
That's why, Who Made Who came out. He grabbed AC/DC and Anthrax, and it's a total metalhead.
Yeah.
And his wife's a great writer, and his son's a great writer.
Yeah.
Before we started talking about writing, we were talking about doing things one at a time and talking about doing things under another name.
Yes.
And I've talked about this to exhaustion, but Prince has done this because Warner only wanted to do one album a year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got, what happens in 1984? You get Purple Rain, but you also get the Time Ice Cream Castles. That's Prince.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You also get the Apollonia 6 album. That's Prince. You also get Sheila E. and the Glamorous Life. That's also Prince. So dude did 4 albums that year, at least 4 albums that year.
Was Vanity that year? Or just
they had broken up before that. Nasty Girl, I don't know if it came out in 83, but it was right around that.
Yeah.
It was right around that. It was Apollonia 6 replaced Vanity 6 when they split up.
And then he had protege projects down the road that he would suddenly slide in and out of too, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, they told him, I don't know when it was. I don't remember. It might have been 1999 because he wrote so much material for that. And he said, "Look, I want to do Del Well, but I got several other albums I could release off of this. Can I just get them out?" They're like, "No, one a year because we got to have time to promote it. If you start throwing too much stuff out there, we can't promote it. It's just a waste of money." So he said, "Well, can I produce other artists?" Like, "Oh, you can do all that. You can do all the production stuff you want. You can work with other artists. That's fine." So that's when he adopted names like Jamie Starr and Star Company. So he's producing albums under Jamie Starr, who is his alter ego character, who's basically Morris Day, kind of the pimp guy, but he's a little more rough around the edges than Morris, and he goes into character. Prince was a health nut. Jamie Starr smoked. He drank heavily. I mean, he went into it like method acting with this stuff.
So he was obviously a handsome individual.
I can show you pictures of Jamie Starr.
And obviously,
it's kind of a trip. It's not what you expect, especially from back then.
Right.
It's different.
You know what? The question becomes, and it will go unanswered. All of the creative geniuses of the past that ran into that wall, with the way the music business is today, how different their careers would have gone. Because someone like Prince today, and I mean in 2022, with the fact that really releasing albums has gone to the left pretty far, Prince could literally release a song a day, every day for probably the next 10 years and tour at his leisure and just pound people with music and start making different compilations. And Nine Inch Nails' last album was released solely online. Hey, if you like it, throw some money at us. By the way, we're releasing this because we're going to get our money on tour. Elton John made no money on tour. Kiss lost money on tour because
here's
product to sustain the label that paid the band.
I totally see where you're going with this, but here is, I feel like, the fundamental issue of your hypothesis.
Yes.
And that is, Prince today would not have the support from anyone for artist development, which he had. Today, if you get signed, or it's been this way for many years, but in the old days it was different. Today, if you get signed, you do an album. If this album flops, you're done. Get out of here. We don't want to know you anymore.
Right. That's
Back
true.
in the old days, you could do several albums and flop, and the label still keeps you. I believe, if I remember right, and I'm doing this off of memory, Willie Nelson had 9 albums, solo albums, before he had a hit. And the record company was fine with that.
Yeah.
Of course, he was a writer too, so that helped. But there are so many like that. I'm thinking of Electric Light Orchestra.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Lynne. How many albums did ELO release before what did they catch with? The hell was it? Was it Telephone Line? Was it Strange Magic? It was,
one of those too.
I think it was Telephone Line.
But there were several albums that were very lackluster and they didn't do much.
But they did this to everyone. Bruce Springsteen in the interview is like, the label was going to drop me. What'd you give him? Thunder Road.
Yeah.
His biggest album. It's like a foregone, it's like almost an acceptable story of, just like they always say, you have your whole life to write your first album and you have 6 months to write your second.
Right.
So that second and third and fourth.
That's true.
And it's just nowadays there's a deal, if you're not familiar with it, called a 360. And there's a lot of press about a 360 deal. Bands keep their merch, and your merch is what you sell at a show.
Yeah, t-shirts and
having booked big acts back in my day, I can tell you, one of the reasons a band will play a nightclub for 20 grand, but when I call them and say, hey, do you want to do my boat for a corporate client? They suddenly jump to 50 grand. It's one, because they're in demand.
They can't, yeah.
And two, they get no other money. There's no merch. There's no promotion. There's no album sales. There's nothing.
Right.
Bands live and die on merch. Kiss, their merch is in the thousands per person at a show, because you now have a chance to buy guitar straps, guitars, all this stuff off
waffle irons
on stage. So
waffle irons.
Like a 360 would kill them.
Kiss will put their name on anything.
Oh yes, they will. Everyone else wanted to be the Stones. Kiss wanted to be Coke.
Yeah, I have the slap chopper. For onions.
360 deals now. New up and coming bands. You've dreamed your whole life. You're going to get in a studio. Hey, we'll give it to you. Guy with a cigar behind a desk. Kid, I'm going to make you a star. Sign this. What is it? It's a 360. What does it include? Everything. We get percentage of everything in perpetuity. We get your merch. We get your sales. We get your tour. You can't use your own name, which goes back to Prince when he was like, but I'm Prince. No, we own that. We own that. You might be Prince, but we own the likeness of that. You can't just run around with it. This is the downside of today's music industry, and why you're getting so much music so quickly. You and I, if this show was back in the 70s, we'd have 10 episodes on the new Elton John album. 10 episodes.
Yeah. Let me just go back a little bit before we fork off too many different forks here. Because what I wanted to say was, in addition to the record companies not supporting anything that resembles artist development these days, I believe that part of artist development is the struggle.
Oh God, yeah.
And so you don't have the support of artist development. You don't have the struggle of artist development. I don't know. I don't think Prince would
find your
today.
Voice.
I'm not suggesting there isn't a Prince out there ready to happen. I'm just saying that today's climate wouldn't allow him to happen.
I agree with you.
Same thing with Elton John.
I agree with you.
Yeah. And that's
also
sad. It is what it is.
There's also too many people now, and you can thank YouTube and tabs and everything else. I grew up at a time when if you wanted to learn something, you had the options of a teacher, a book, or picking up the needle and putting it down, picking up the needle and putting it down and listening and focusing. That is gone. I could take a non-guitar playing person and probably in not very much time, get them to copy a song from YouTube, note for note, that the band does. But I will always go back to the thing that I feel separates talent from playing. The talent wrote it. You're copying it. I could find 1,000 guys that can play Eddie Van Halen's Eruption. You know what they all have in common? Not one of them.
I don't mean to sound like you, Jay. I don't mean to. And I know that I've said this before about the Randy Bachman interview from the Guess Who and Black Return Overdrive. I've probably mentioned this, but he said someone had a long time ago had told him, look, there's always going to be a better guitar player out there. You just can't get around it. And it's going to be a 12-year-old kid. You know, so learn to write. Learn to write. And if you can write, it doesn't matter. You're going to be fine.
I put in my time in the 80s. I've never told this story on the show.
Oh, well, here it comes.
It'll be very short. And in
I'm waiting for the punchline.
We've heard that before.
I'm waiting for the punchline.
1985, I had saved up money. I was working then a $3 an hour job.
Okay.
Sold a bunch of stuff I had.
Okay.
And
sure, this wasn't the summer of '69?
No, it was summer of 85.
Okay, just making sure. Okay.
July 1985. And I moved my little operation world from Boston on a one-way ticket on People's Express through Newark to Los Angeles. I flew out on a Sunday night. So Monday morning, get a rent-a-car through a friend of mine, find a hotel on Sunset Strip, check in, immediately down the street to Guitar Center with my money to get a guitar.
Yeah.
I walk in and there is this 13, 14-year-old kid. My hair was a little shorter than this. His hair is down to his ass and he is ripping Van Halen riffs and Randy Rhoads things. And I walked in it broke my heart because I was like, wait, I'm not Randy Rhoads or Eddie Van Halen by any stretch, but I thought I had the chops to get through it. And I looked around me and there was 1,000 people who were just tearing it up. And it scared me crapless.
Yeah.
It really did. Because I thought LA, they're going to be girls in bikinis with big signs looking for the next Motley Crue guitar player. I'm like, I could totally do that.
Yeah.
But I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any contacts. And it wasn't the romantic, Sunset Strip stories you heard from Poison and Motley and Rat and everyone else. It was dog eat dog. And it was, the genie was out of the bottle and there was a ton of talent. And I questioned myself for this much and it made me end up going home a few weeks later.
Well, let's wrap this into DJ.
Through it and said, you know what? I don't give a shit what these kids can do. I still am going to be me. So it's the same thing with Randy Bachman. There's only you. You're the only you on this planet.
Yeah.
You realize your fingerprints, 8 billion people, no one has your fingerprints. So feel the same way about you as a person. And no one will ever have your voice.
I would make,
your voice is gone then too.
I would make,
there'll be no other Prince.
I would make the argument that artist development for us is important too. I'm not the same DJ I was 20 years ago.
Neither am I.
Or 30 years ago. Because I was a DJ 30 years ago. And I thought I was doing all right. I'm a different guy now. I've grown. I've experienced things. I've realized things. I feel I'm better than I was 30 years ago. I don't feel like I've digressed. I don't feel like I've gone into my, hey, be patient with me, folks. We're going to play one from our new album. Oh, don't worry. It won't take long. I don't think I'm there. I think I'm better than that.
Yeah. I did a gig Friday night. I had a 25-year-old guy come up, general manager of a bar nightclub sort of thing. Bar restaurant, but they have DJs like 4 nights a week. Comes up, he goes, man, you're killing it. You got a card? I want to put you in rotation. Really? Because when he comes up to me, I've got a young crowd in front of me. I'm playing Sweetie, SZA, Drake, Weekend remixes, a bunch of tropical house. He's loving what I'm doing. And in my head, I was just like, oh, that's a cool compliment. He wants my card. But the essence of being a DJ is 3 words: read the crowd. And 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have thought I knew more than the crowd. Today, I don't know anything until I show up. And when I do show up, I read the crowd.
Well, that's what we're doing right now. Yeah.
What I did for a living would fit into his thing. I'm like, what's your audience like? He's like this, 20s and 30s. And I'm like, and you want a guy that's 38 years older than your audience to DJ here? Because I'm a DJ. It's not my age. It's that I'm a DJ. And it's the same evolution that you're talking about, Brian.
Well, how weird would it be? How weird would it be to actually DJ in front of an audience who wanted to be turned on to something different? You know, it seems like that's just not the audience anymore. The audience now is, I want it to sound like my Spotify. And if I don't like it, I want you to skip it. And I'm going to make this motion for that.
Yeah.
You know who's
because I don't like it.
No
one likes this song. In the meantime, there's 1,000 people behind them dancing. No one wants to hear this.
Oh, I hate that.
Play my song.
I'm going to throw headphones or a mic or an SM58, which I know will go right through their forehead. One of these nights, I'm just going to whip one right at that girl or guy. I swear I am.
I just say, hey, sorry, Karen, and move on, you know?
But you know what? Pulse and I had this talk. I think I mentioned it recently, where eventually Vegas will have clubs and bars off the strip where t-shirt and jean wearing people like us can walk in because there is a DJ there who is going to take us on an adventure sonically. They're going to take us on this audio trip where, oh, wow, what's this? Oh, this is kind of a deep house vibe. Oh, whoa, now it's tech house. Or, now it's kind of just a vibe. That's the thing I love about kind of that whole chill ambient thing. You get that sort of license to play. If you're playing new pop, if you're doing open format, what you're playing is what's on their Spotify playlist. I 100% agree with you, Brian.
Yeah.
100%.
It doesn't make sense to me that if you have access to your Spotify,
why are you bothering me about playing?
Why are you here when you can go sit in your car and listen to everything you want to hear?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm an intrusion on you.
Take you on an adventure.
I'm keeping you from your Spotify list right now. I'm so sorry.
No, back 20 years ago, that's what I went to see DJs for. I would find out some guy was playing in San Diego and they'd be like, oh, you got to go see Ed Rush. This guy's amazing. He's doing this thing. And I'm like, oh, I want to go see, I experience that. And that's the key word. I wanted to experience that night. People don't experience jack now. They go in with an agenda. They're paying $18 a drink. They're doing this. The night costs $200-$300 and they feel entitled, as they probably should, for that money. To say,
right.
What's going on? I paid $5 to get in and I paid $3 for a plastic cup with Bud Light in it. If I'm not having a good time, I'm out, $8.
Damn kids.
But now it's like, oh, it's $25 to get in, and it's this.
I know.
Hold on.
I know. It's like setting you up for failure. I totally get it. And so I'm just glad I'm old.
About Twitch. You know what I love about Twitch? You can do whatever the hell you want on Twitch.
I had more fun than I guarantee my kid will ever have. I mean, and I might be the first generation to be able to claim that.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at Howie. How do you think he feels to be?
Oh my God!
They overruled prohibition. I mean, he got to see that Bud made up.
That's true. I have seen.
I love that he's got such a good sense of humor. He comes right back with, "That's true. I was there."
I have seen.
Me and so much, Thompson.
I've enjoyed so much.
The Zoot Suit riots and all that stuff. You were there, man.
I feel sorry for some of the
dolls, Brian. He saw the dolls. Do you know how many
dolls?
Chris Cox is a Grammy-nominated producer, remixer, has had probably at least by now 100 Billboard #1 dance remixes of very famous artists. And when I spoke with him, and the conversation broke a couple years ago to blah, blah, blah. And, oh, yeah, this guy, Howie, He used to do sound at Max's Kansas City for the Dolls. And Howie, you can attest this because you've talked to Chris about it. Chris was blown away. Been on the version of this show and just been, well, how, you think Howie will tell stories? Texting me. You think Howie will tell a story about the Dolls? Think Howie will tell a story about Max's? Like, what was going on, Max? Like, because he's a DJ that loves the history of music.
Yeah.
Howie,
he does.
I make no bones about it. The greatest name, and I learned it in 1979 while listening to Night in the Ruts by Aerosmith on a song called No Surprise, which talks about them being signed by Clive Davis.
Yes.
And the line is Max's Kansas City. And I thought that's the best name I've ever heard for a club. Hands down, Max's Kansas City. That or Warm Beer from Hell. Those are the two names that I always thought if I could open a club, Max's Kansas City, Warm Beer from Hell. One of the two of them.
But kind of like sex.
If we weren't so close to the end here, I would tell the story. But
go ahead and tell the story.
Tell the story.
Go on, tell the story.
All right.
Times mean nothing.
I'll give you the Reader's Digest version.
Not the J version.
They actually paid Max's
to play that
there because they knew that Clive Davis was going to be there. And that was their one shot.
Smart move.
And Clive signed them right then and there in the upstairs room of Max's.
That totally makes sense, though.
Move.
That totally makes sense.
When I was in LA in 85, I heard about pay to plays. Bands were paying whiskey to play because they knew if you could get in front of that audience, you were going to have industry people. John broke at the Troubadour in like 71.
Somebody gave them the heads up that Clive Davis was going to be there, and they were all ready. They were ready. They contacted the right people. They said, we'll pay to play that night. And there were 4 bands that played. It was a showcase, we called it back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if they weren't talented enough, it wouldn't have mattered if they paid $1 million.
Right.
That's the goal of you wanting to get in front of the right people. You've got what it takes. You have the skill and talent. If you have to pry the door open with an axe, then guess what? You need to invest in an axe. If you have to pay to get on stage in front of the head of, who was Clive and was not A&M? Who was he? Not Arista. Who was he the head of? He was the head of Columbia, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, Columbia. I think their early catalog was Columbia. But I mean, if that's what it takes, why not? Okay. If you find out that Clive lives down the street from you, grab your guitar, go stand on the sidewalk and start playing. Guess what? Yeah. If you're any good, Clive's going to hear it and eventually go, you know what? This kid comes down here, rain or shine, 365 days in a row. That's the persistence I need in my artist. You're signed. Does it matter how you got there? No. If you didn't sell, drugs illegally and hurt people, but if you had to pay a little bit to get in the door and then your talent shines through, I'm 100% behind that. 100%.
So before we wrap the show, I want to congratulate Jay because I didn't hear, to be blunt, or to be honest, one time.
Not
correct.
Once.
I'm not done torturing his ass about this.
Nope.
Because it's fun.
No, and I'm glad you do it because
it's helping. I think it's helping.
That I need to evacuate from my vocab.
I'm trying to help.
Yeah. And now when I hear other people say it, I cringe.
Yes.
Like
go back and watch shows from a month ago and you'll
I'm sure like
you
18 times I probably said it. No. I talked to Izzy the other day because 2023 our contracts are up and we're renegotiating with John right now and it's not looking good. I'll be blunt. Oh, I had to throw in.
Okay.
But
maybe next week.
Invisible agent Izzy Iskowitz.
All right, kids. We'll see you next week if you're lucky. Take care.